Part three, control. Death reveals control for what it always is, comforting fiction. Toll often speaks of how proximity to death can trigger a profound shift in consciousness. Instead of terror, one may suddenly recognize something deeper. He recalled his own awakening. He said, even if you have missed all the other opportunities for spiritual realization during your lifetime, one last portal will open up for you near the time of death. That happened to me. I was just that close to suicide. And then something else happened, a death of the sense of self that lived through identifications. Something arose at that moment that was a sense of deep and intense stillness and aliveness. It was beingness. The ego's defenses collapse when faced with the ultimate uncontrollable event. What we call control is simply consciousness identifying with mental activity and claiming ownership of what unfolds by itself. When death approaches and the ego's imagined control systems fail, a recognition sometimes dawns. Personal agency was always a story. What remains is the awareness that was never threatened by what the ego feared losing. One of my teachers told me about a student of hers in Israel. He left his living room for a glass of water, and seconds later, a bomb destroyed the spot where he had been sitting. Instead of trauma, he experienced an ego collapse right there in that moment. Not from the explosion itself, but from the undeniable realization that he had never truly been in control, that he was not the author of his thoughts. From that moment forward, fear left him completely. I discovered what he meant during a meditation on my drive to Vegas. Somewhere across Utah's salt flats, fear appeared in a new form. As Mr. Hanky from the show South Park, this ridiculous comical poop character wearing a Santa hat that made me laugh at the absurdity of taking it all so seriously. In that moment, I understood fear's necessity in this cosmic game we call life. Without fear, we couldn't recognize love. Without darkness, we couldn't appreciate light. Without the illusion of separation, we couldn't experience the joy of connection. I actually found myself thanking fear in the form of Mr. Hanky, of all things that it appeared as it dissolved away completely for about 30 minutes. Grateful for its role in creating the very contrasts that make existence meaningful. Aha, I thought, it's necessary. And from then on, I began to see this truth everywhere, in fear, in resistance, in control itself. The ego clings to elaborate fantasies of control, believing it can choose thoughts, dictate emotions, manipulate relationships, steer careers, protect health, shape the future, and even manage spiritual progress. It thinks even it can control its breath, heartbeat, cellular regeneration, and the arising of consciousness each morning. Yet, as one master told me, you aren't breathing, you are being breathed. Non-duality reveals this illusion. Ramana Maharshi often pointed to this illusion of control as one of the ego's most persistent delusions, explaining that the separate self believes it's the author of its thoughts, the doer of its actions, and the controller of its destiny. When in reality, everything unfolds spontaneously within consciousness itself. To understand this, try a simple experiment right now. Sit quietly and try not to think for the next 30 seconds. Really try. What happens? Thoughts keep rising anyway, completely ignoring your attempt to stop them. You didn't choose what thought would come next. Maybe it was about what you had for breakfast or a memory from childhood or wondering if this experiment is working. These thoughts simply appeared in your awareness like clouds forming in an empty sky. If you could control your thoughts, wouldn't you choose not to have them? Now consider this morning when you woke up. Did you decide to become conscious? Did you author the dream you just had? Did you choose to feel hungry, or did hunger simply arise? Did you decide to feel the urge to use the bathroom, or did that sensation just appear? When you reached for your phone, was there really a decider making that choice? Or did the hand simply move toward the device as naturally as your heart beats and your lungs breathe? If you examine any moment closely, you'll find that life is simply happening through you and not by you. The sense that there's a separate someone In charge is just another thought arising in the same awareness where everything else appears, including the very thought, I am in control. When someone insists, I decided to reach for my phone, you can ask, but who decided to make that decision? Did you choose to want the phone in the first place? The desire arose out of boredom, habit, or notification. They didn't choose to feel bored or to form that habit. And if you press further, when exactly did you decide? The illusion crumbles. Decisions often involve noticing that an action is already happening and then claiming ownership afterward. It's like a wave in the ocean saying, I decided to crash on the shore. The feeling of being in control is actually consciousness recognizing itself in the action, then mistakenly identifying with a separate self who claims credit for awareness itself is doing. This brings up the debate on determinism and free will, and there are respected teachers on both sides. Campbell defines consciousness as awareness with a choice, and I love that definition. He argues that evolution and learning require genuine decisions. If everything were predetermined, life would be nothing more than a script. No growth, no lessons, just the illusion of learning. A classroom where all answers were pre-decided would be meaningless. So too would existence. For Campbell, our school of life depends on real choices, love or fear, growth or stagnation, service or selfishness. If these aren't real choices, but just predetermined outcomes, then the whole system becomes meaningless. There's no actual evolution of consciousness, no genuine learning, no real spiritual development. We'd just be awareness watching a movie where everything was already decided. That's why Campbell insists consciousness must include choice. On the other hand, David Parrish argues for strict determinism, as do many neuroscientists who point to studies showing brain activity preceding conscious awareness of decisions. He says determinism is actually a profound relief because it completely liberates us from the exhausting burden of believing we're responsible for controlling our lives. When you truly see that everything, including your thoughts, emotions, and actions, is simply unfolding according to natural laws and prior conditions, the ego's constant struggle to manage outcomes finally relaxes. Parrish points out that determinism doesn't negate spirituality, it reveals its deepest truth. If everything is predetermined, then your awakening is also predetermined. Your suffering was predetermined to lead to your seeking. Your seeking was predetermined to lead to your finding. And your finding was predetermined to reveal that there was never anyone separate to find anything in the first place. The relief comes from recognizing that you were never actually driving this bus. Life has been living itself all along. And what you call your spiritual journey is simply consciousness recognizing itself through the apparent vehicle of you. This view dissolves spiritual ego and self-judgment, showing that addiction, depression, or unconscious behavior are conditions born of prior causes, not moral failures. Even the urge to change arises deterministically. Parrish argues this accelerates awakening by removing the final illusion that someone must do something to become enlightened. When that falls away, only pure awareness remains, seeing everything, including the search itself, as already perfect. In the end, Adyashanti offers the most liberating perspective and the one I find most compelling. We both have free will and we don't, he says. Ultimately, really ask yourself, does it really matter? No, it doesn't, since the whole debate is just brain candy, more workings of the mind trying to figure this whole thing out.